Doctor, can I see my screen?
It's coming up, yeah.
Yeah. I got 3 articles. Two of them
Can you make
are
it
from.
slightly bigger, Alice?
Can you hear me, Doctor?
No, can you make it slightly bigger? Yes, I can hear you.
Oh, it's bigger. Okay. How about now, Doctor?
Yes.
Okay. I have got 3 articles. Two of them are from a Chinese scholar, and one is from Indian scholar. Mm. First, first is about the definition of literary translation, and role and the importance of the literary translation in comparative literature, and and for this this importance of translation in comparative literature, this essay focus on the foreign text translated into Chinese version, and next is the same the same essay that you use in our class, and this is a background of comparative literature in 20th century, and is talk about the three crises about comparative literature, and next is the scholars discourse about the comparative literature is dying, and the reason why is dying, and the two schools of comparative literature, the French scholars and the American scholars, how they define comparative literature. And for this translation in comparative literature, this in this article, it focus on how to translate, how important translation in Chinese literature, because Chinese literature are written in Chinese, and it need to be translated into English to let the world know. And this article focus on the importance of the translating the Chinese literature. And the third article is role of translation in comparative literature, as by Indian scholar. I spent lots of time searching articles from the Eastern scholars, and I found mostly is a Chinese scholars, and this one is Indian scholar. He gives a definition of comparative literature and translation. And for this importance of translation in comparative literature, I think what is different is that he takes Indian literature, for example, and show how translation is important in Indian literature. And that's all. That's all I have now. Yeah.
Okay. Just a second.
Okay.
If you look at your if you look at your the 3 articles, and if you ask yourself a simple question like, what am I trying to say about comparative literature and translation? What do you get? The answer to that question, what do you get?
For I get I divided into 3 points. First point is the definition of translation and comparative literature. And in my presentation, I will first focus on the definition and compare the three articles definition and find their differences. And the second point uh, is about the background of comparative literature and translation. Uh, in Because in the second article is the background of comparative literature is in this article. They say the comparative literature is dying. Why is dying? So I think I should explain it. And this for the third point, I think, is the importance of translation in comparative literature. They have different situations in different countries. I think well, the two articles are from Chinese scholar and one is from Indian scholar. I think I can make a comparison between the two countries and see how it shows its importance in these two countries.
Okay. So the three components that you described, definition, background, and importance of translation to comparative literature, that's the structure of your presentation. And the structure of your presentation is based on what it is that you are trying to prove. Okay. If I go back to your the assignment schedule that I gave and the question that I gave in the course file, right? Can you see the page that I'm sharing?
Yes, doctor.
Yeah. So the three components that you talked about kind of tallies with what the presentation must include, the component of definition, you have background of translation studies and comparative literature, and the importance of translation in comparative literature. So you have the structure of your presentation. The bigger picture, if you like, so you've got the structure, you've got the three key components that you want to talk about, which is great. Now, if you step back a little bit and look at the bigger picture, what do you want to say about the state of comparative literature in the 21st century? So you are reviewing three critical essays on comparative literature, and you're doing this to conduct a review of the discipline. So what is that one statement that you want to make about the state of comparative literature, about the difference, perhaps the difference between the Western school and the Eastern school? That one statement that you want to make, in order to conduct the review of the discipline of comparative literature in the 21st century, you need to start with that. You need to start by saying, what is it that you're proposing about the state of comparative literature in the 21st century? And once you have that statement in mind, you have a clear idea, okay, this is what I want to say, then the structure of defining it, discussing the background, discussing the importance of translation becomes a lot clearer. The purpose of it becomes a lot clearer, So the how of how you're going to conduct your review is by looking at definition, discussing the background, discussing the importance of translation. But the why needs to start the presentation. You need to begin by knowing, why am I doing this? Right? Why you're doing this is here in order to conduct a review of the discipline. What that means is, based on the three articles that you have read, you're going to step back and look at the whole thing and say, comparative literature in the 21st century needs to incorporate or needs to include what? Translation, translation studies, translated works, what? So have a kind of a more general statement that you argue for, right? That you are making a debate towards or an argument towards. And then you talk about the details of it through looking at the definition of comparative literature and translation, background, importance of translation in comparative literature, and then you conclude. So if you can do it that way, the presentation that you have shown us just now, it becomes more clearer. What is the review that you have summarized based on these three articles? Does that make sense?
Yes, doctor.
Yeah.
Because before today, I spent lots of time to searching
Yeah,
the
that's
article
good.
from the
That's
Eastern
good.
scholars. Yeah, it's it's
And
not easy to do that. Yeah.
yes,
All I
true.
find is about Chinese scholars, but
Yeah.
I think I should find other Eastern scholars. I want to make a comparison. Yeah, and
Okay, you see that could be the statement you are making. What is the difference between the Chinese school and the Indian school of comparative literature? Maybe that's the statement you are making. So the perspective might not be purely from the Western Eastern comparison, but within the Eastern schools, there are diversity of perspectives, right? So
yeah.
your thesis statement, it's depending on how you have understood the thinking process that you have come to realize based on your readings of these articles. That's the key. I think once you have developed a kind of a critical idea about the topic, you can now make a statement, a clearer statement that is uniquely your perspective. That's what this assignment wants from you, from all of you. This first assignment is basically asking you to develop an ability to conduct a critical review. A critical review is not a summary of what is in this article. A critical review is my reading, my perspective of these articles that I have read. So I've read all these three articles, and my critical perspective is there is a difference between the Indian school of comparative literature, as seen in this article, compared to the Chinese school of comparative literature, as seen in this article. Or there isn't a difference, that the Eastern school appears to have a more homogeneous attitude when it comes to comparative literature and translated text. So you need to begin with that kind of a critical statement that you're making based on a review of literature, not based on original research. You are not doing an original research. You are doing a review of literature. So your reading informs the critical opinion that you are forming. The readings of the essays helps you develop a perspective, a critical perspective. That means I'm not telling you what the perspective is. The writers in the articles are not telling you. You are making up your own mind. You're making up your own opinion based on what you are reading, based on their research, based on their finding. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, doctor.
Yeah. So that
And
would be different from the second and the third assignment, right? The second and the third assignment, you are going to be the one doing the research. The findings comes from you. The first one, the findings comes from the journal articles or book chapters of books that you are reading. But you still have to do the critical component of the discussion. You still have to form your own mind, your own opinion. You still have to exercise your critical thinking. Okay, and that's what you begin with your presentation. But I like your draft. I like your the points that you have identified. I think that's clear. Now what you need to do is restructure it in a way that you don't go from journal article 1 to journal article 2 to journal article 3. Go with the methodology, the structure that you have identified, which is you're looking at the definition of comparative literature from 3 different perspectives. You're looking at the background of comparative literature as seen by 3 different scholars or 3 different perspectives. And based on those 3 perspectives, you want to debate or discuss this idea of translation and comparative literature. How relevant is translation in comparative literature seen from the Indian school of comparative literature and the Chinese school of comparative literature. So that will be the presentation. But as you discuss each topic, you bring in the different journal articles. You may break it up in a way that allows you to go from one topic to another, but for each topic, you bring all 3 articles.
Yeah,
Okay?
I think the same way, and because yesterday I just finished in reading the 3 articles, and so I pick what I got in each article and put it together, and think what scratches can I have. So I think the 3 points of that, and what I find is the most different between the Chinese scholars and Indian scholars is this their purpose to study the comparative literature. For Chinese scholars, the one is to bring the outside in, to bring the English literature in Chinese, how to translate English literature into Chinese, and the second is how to go out to let other countries and Chinese literature in English, translate it into English, and don't lose much about the original style. Yeah. And for Indian scholar, they focus on their own literature because they have in their country they have lots of languages, not one language in a country. So they have to translate it into a common user language and to see how to understanding their own literature. Yeah, and I think they
Okay.
focus more on
But
that.
that's brilliant. That's exactly your thesis statement. That's what your thesis statement should be. But I have a question. For the Indian school, do they see what they're doing as comparative literature, or is just to broaden literature in their own country? You know, because they have many languages and each language produces a wealth of literature of their own. Do these scholars who are proposing the importance of translation in order to incorporate Indian literatures in all the Indian literatures as part of the literary canon, do they see this as comparative literature, or do they see this as just literature? You know, how do they define it?
In the article I found, the author see it as a comparative literature. Yeah.
That's where you come in. Now, you've been exposed to the 20th century definition of comparative literature from the French school, the Anglo-American school, right? Do you see the Indian school of comparative literature in which they look at texts from within the subcontinent, right? Translated, is it viewed as comparative literature, how do you resolve this in your own mind? Do you think this is a definition of comparative literature? So that's how you conclude. Do you understand? Because yes, on the one hand, India has many, many languages and many literatures, and being able to read across these cultures in India will enrich the reading of the Indian literary canon. But is that comparative literature? Because go back to the core of why we conduct comparative literature, or why we study text comparatively. It's to be able to see the universal themes across literatures, right? But if you're only reading within your literary canon, within your nation state, how is that broadening the universal ideas of literature across literary canons? It is not, right? The fundamental of comparative literature is not just to read literatures, but also to read it comparatively across time and space, across geographical boundaries, to show the universal themes from one literary canon to another. So it's not just a matter of language. It's not just a matter of cultures within the same locality. It's looking at separate localities and seeing how different geographical locations somehow are connected to each other in the way stories are told. Right? So this is how you wrap up your presentation. Because I think you know what you are trying to say. Now it comes to presenting it in your video essay.
Yeah.
You know, I can hear what you're trying to say, but I'm not going to grade you based on this consultation. I have to grade all of you based on your final product. So this is the process. The consultation is the process. The final product is when you demonstrate, just like it's an essay or a seminar or a video essay, final project. That is the time when you demonstrate your learning outcome. I have understood what I'm asked to do. I have understood the knowledge that I need to acquire. Now I'm showing my assignment as proof that I have reached the learning outcome. Right? So you must watch this video a few times if necessary. I will send the recording to you to help you understand, how do I transfer this into the final product of my assignment? Then I can get the grades.
Okay, thank you, Doctor.
Any other questions?
No, I think I should make my PowerPoint slides and make my schedule clearly. Yeah, and think
That's
about
good.
what I'm thinking about the 3 articles, what I want to say, and make it clear when I'm presenting.